Welcome to Texans on Tap. I'm Brandon Strange with Charlie Palullo and Josh Jordan. Follow them on X at Palullo and at Josh Jordan 975 and read their work on sportsmap.com. Texans went into this game with all kinds of questions on offense. No Nico Collins. On defense, no Will Anderson Jr. Texans played about as good of a first half as you can against Detroit, scoring on their first 4 possessions, 5 of their first 6, including a 43-second touchdown drive. But the second half struggles for offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick and the Houston offense were on full display this game. Texans dropped this 26-23, held completely scoreless in the second half. Scoreless. Before I get your thoughts, guys, we want everyone's thoughts here. So make sure we see a lot of people already in the comment section. They're commenting. Make sure you give us your thoughts. And while you're at it, click like on the video if you're ready to see a change on the offensive coaching staff. Hit subscribe if you haven't already and click the bell for notifications when you're on the go. We're on all your favorite podcast apps. Gents, a historic loss for Houston. First time since 2012 a team loses after picking off the opposition 5 times. Let's start with the offense, who absolutely imploded in the second half, starting with a pick on the very first play out of the half. Charlie, we start with you since you were there. What happened?
Hey, the first half was one of the better halves in Texans history, given everything Detroit has accomplished. And the defense, while registering 0 sacks, absolutely flustered Jared Goff. But the Texans offense, you asked the Texans offense. Joe Mixon was snuffed the entire game. I mean, it took him until midway third quarter to get over 1 yard per carry for the night. So props to Detroit there, and just not enough respect for Texans passing game weapons, at least over 4 quarters. John Mechie had the few minutes of his pro career, capped by the touchdown just before the half, which, of course, if anyone was thinking, well, that puts it away at 23-7, that was foolish. But it was a big score, and then you're getting the ball where if you drive and score to start the second half, you're pretty close to putting it away. But C.J. Stroud, who on that drive late in the first half, I thought threw just 2 perfect balls before the touchdown to Mechie, which was just perfectly on point where only he could make a play on it, and he did. He hit Schultz on an out, just on a dime. And then C.J. Stroud with 2 pathetic interceptions in the third quarter. The first one, just sort of a telegraphed out throw, Tank Dell, bad throw, picked off. Branch is a hell of a safety, by the way, for the Lions. And then he has Tank Dell open for a touchdown. And C.J. Stroud, whether he just missed him in his field of vision but held the ball too long, whether he's worrying about the rush and not picking up the receiver down the field. But that was a pretty by NFL standards, that was a gimme touchdown throw. But by the time Stroud got it out there, the defender could close on the ball, and Davis picked it off. Stroud was sacked 4 times. It wasn't the complete disaster of, say, the Jets game. But they just don't have 5 linemen who should be starting in the NFL. Scruggs from center to guard. Was he honoring Kenyon Green with 2 holding calls? Jared Patterson to, a fill-in center. Field position aided their cause offensively in the first half, right? You get Goff continually throwing it to the Texans. The first half, the Texans never started a drive inside their 30-yard line. The Lions never started one outside their 30-yard line. That leveled off some in the second half. But Josh, you enumerated the gruesome week to week a week or 2 ago. So if you want the ghastly recap, have at it. The Texans' second half offense routinely is a bleep show. And that was the second half of this game, where it was interception or 3 and out. 1 first down on 1 drive was their best drive until the last one, where they managed 2 first downs. It's tough to bag on Fairbairn for missing from 58 yards. But on a night that he sets the league record for 50-plus yard field goals in a game with his 11th, he misses. Meanwhile, Jake Bates is an amazing story. Maybe we'll touch upon that a little more later. But, the Texans took the Lions behind the woodshed in the first half, and they got taken behind the woodshed in the second half. And he who woodsheds last, woodsheds best, or something like that.
Yeah, it was a tale of 2 halves. The Texans were fantastic in the first half, especially CJ. The defense, we can't complain about the defense. You get 5 interceptions offense needs to do enough to win that football game. And you could just tell the defense was gassed at the end because they were on the field the whole second half. And I mean, there's so much blame to pass around here, but most of it's on the offense. I mean, a lot of drops today. Robert Woods and Tank Dell. CJ just, I mean, that first interception, just the tone setter to start the second half, to just give them the ball right there. And then you get bailed out. Lassiter gets the interception after that, and the Lions weren't able to score. So CJ got bailed out there. And then still after that, he couldn't get it together. Just the sacks and the Titus Howard trying to strip the ball from CJ Stroud, that made no sense to me. I'm like, what are we doing here? Just a lot of that stuff. Joe Mixon couldn't do anything. We talked about it last week, how Joe Mixon didn't even have a target in the Jets game, whereas the game before he caught 4 balls and he was a big part of the passing game. Mixon was a big reason that they were able to get that nice lead in the first half, because they were throwing him the football and it wasn't working, just him running the ball. But in the second half, they hardly tried to throw to him at all. I thought that last play to Hutchinson where there should have been the pass interference, I'm like, why are you going to Hutchinson with the game on the line here? And even though it was a PI, he got contacted early, a linebacker was standing in front right there. Like, CJ shouldn't have thrown it to him in the first place. He's lucky it didn't get intercepted there. I also didn't like D'Amico's decision to go for the field goal in that spot. I didn't feel good about Fairbairn kicking a 58-yarder. To be a little fair to him, I thought the snap was high. So I think that may have screwed up the timing a little bit, but I would have liked them to either punt or go for it there. And then finally, the one that kind of bothered me was with the game on the line, when the Lions are driving and they got to get a play, third down, they go to Amon-Ra St. Brown, their best player, one of the best receivers in all of football. We talked about this. I said
you talked about it.
Yeah, I was like, if D'Amico thinks he's just going to put Jalen Petrie on him this entire game and it's going to go well, you're sadly mistaken. They did have a plan for him and they held him in check for most of the game. But with the game on the line, you put Azeez Al-Shire on him, a linebacker on one of the best receivers in the NFL. He catches it, they kick the field goal, and then that's the ball game. So a lot of blame to go around here. I've been kind of real kids gloves with CJ. I can't do it this week. Second half was really disappointed with how he played.
Yeah, look, and how much of the cumulative toll of poor pass protection impacts things. But this is the big leagues, right? You need to stand in and make throws or be more accurate on the run. And CJ Stroud's level of play has fallen off. He has already blown past his entire interception total from last season. He just has not been as on target. I mean, it's not like he's end of days Matt Schaub or anything like that. But, at this point last season, it was, is CJ Stroud going to elevate into the MVP race? He's not remotely an afterthought in that conversation at this point. By the way, neither should be Jared Goff, not necessarily just because of the 5-pick game tonight, but you could see the system and the talent around him builds him up. If you want to go a little half glass full, that the Texans played a good enough half. The Lions were due for a clunker, right? The Texans had the extra rest. The Lions coming off a huge intra-division win at Green Bay. They were down multiple starters too. But for the Texans, with no Nico Collins, their most talented offensive player, if it's not Stroud, without Will Anderson, their most physically gifted defensive player, and they led the best team in the NFL, not named Kansas City, sizably at the half. But you don't get to go to the pay window for where you are at the half. 19-0 second half, not even 100 yards of offense in the second half. And Bobby Slowick needs to endure harsher questions.
Yes.
He's not going to get them from certain corners of the media where he's, I guess, made accessible to. But when it's over and over and over, garbage in, garbage out, you are failing. And their second half offense, I mean, this is what you'd expect from the Carolina Panthers or the Jacksonville Jaguars. Fortunately, a little like the Astros, the American League West was the one division in the American League they could win. Well, the AFC South is the one division that the Texans would have a prayer in. Well, it's the division they're in. An 0-for-4 Sunday for the AFC South. But right now in the first round, the Texans would be home against Baltimore, which would probably mean a very swift exit because any sheen of invulnerability at NRG Stadium off the table. And among other things, it wasn't a starry skied night because the cloud cover. But the environment is frankly just much better with the roof open. It's football how it should be. I think they're overdoing with the unis, selling sizzle, and they might look fancy schmancy and all that. But their last 2 games, surrender white, and let's call this bloodied red. Just go with your basic uniforms and get back to playing better football.
Well, Detroit had no problems with the environment because it felt like kind of a home game for them towards the end of the game, because you could audibly hear so many Detroit fans in the stands. It was kind of embarrassing from a Houston fan perspective, the showing there. And Charlie, you took the words right out of my mouth, because while the Texans are number 1 in the South, the entire division took L's today. And it is starting to look like the Astros, where the bar becomes just being the best of the worst. And so, okay, you're number 1 in your division, but what does that really mean when you take a step back and look at what's the performance of this team 3 out of the last 4 weeks here? I just think, beyond harsh criticisms from the media, is it time that, I teased it a little bit in the open, is it time that D'Amico seriously considers a shakeup in the offensive coaching staff?
I don't think within the season, because what move are you going to make? I don't think there's a logical replacement for Slowick. But from a buzzy guy for head coaching candidacy to just a mess, if there was a QBR for halftime adjustments, Slowick would be in negative numbers. It's just an atrocity how bad they've been game in, game out in the second halves. It's one thing if you were just a joke. You were just a terrible, terrible offense and you can't get wrong right. But when so often you're productive in the first half and then in the second half, it's not as if they go blatantly conservative. It's just the whole system breaks down. But I think within the season, it might not be the best dancer, but they're going to dance with who they brought.
Yeah, they're not making a move here, Brandon. I don't think, in my opinion. I mean, they wouldn't even come out and commit that the offensive line has been a problem. Like Nick Caserio saying that's a lazy narrative. I mean, they won't even come out and say the offensive line hasn't been good. So I'm
lazy,
sure,
like his work at the trade deadline.
Yes, exactly. They did next to nothing there. And I mean, they did shake something up, right, with moving Scruggs over to guard and getting Patterson in there at center. I mean, I guess we have to admit in the first half, the O-line looked better than it has in the last few weeks. But I think that's back to my bigger point. The Texans are just a different team at home than they are on the road. I mean, you saw them beat the Bills. That was a big win at home. And, you have the Lions basically dead right there in front of you, but you can't put your foot on their neck and finish them off. But you were still in position. So they just play so much better at home. But I guess it's good that they'll get a home game if they win their division, but that's not going to matter if it is the Ravens or somebody like that. But it's something to keep in mind that when they go on the road, the defense doesn't travel the same. The communication's more poor, and they clearly struggle to score points in the second half, no matter where they play or who's there. And I know we're going to say, oh, if Nico was there, then this would have a different outcome. And yeah, possibly it would. He's a great player, but when you get 5 interceptions on a team and you have a lead like that, and you still have some playmakers, nice to see Mechie get his first touchdown tonight and show you something. But that was the thing I was going to be my topic, was that Noah Brown, like we kind of talked about, nobody thought he was going to get cut before the season started because of the money they had committed to him, but they ended up releasing him and he's picked up with the Commanders now, and he's actually done some things. So it was good to see Mechie kind of show you that he can be a competent NFL receiver. But got to be honest, if you had Noah Brown right now, I'd feel better about it, because one thing we know about Tank and Nico is they miss time every year.
Yeah, and we can't complain about injuries with the Lions being down Hutchinson, but it does show what a difference this team looks like with Nico Collins and now being down Diggs as well. On defense, Texans without Will Anderson Jr., another health scratch. Look, they did everything you could have asked of them in the first half, completely gassed by the end of the game. Charlie, what did you see from the Texans defense there? I mean, again, like I think, hat tip to them. I know, they gave up 19 points in the second half, but at some point you need the offense to just stay on the field and get some positive gain, get some points. And the offense couldn't do it. What did you see from the defense tonight?
Look, Lions came in averaging over 32 points per game. They'd been over 40 in 3 of their last 4 games. So obviously holding a team to 26, you're not going to be confused with the mid-70s Steelers, but it was a credible effort. And as we've already hit upon multiple times, you come up with 5 takeaways. How much more can you hope for from the defense? Not thinking the game was over, but in early mulling player of the game, I was thinking that Jalen Petrie, he didn't get one of the 5 interceptions, but he caused the first one, which gave the Texans the short field to drive for the early score. And then he stopped the 2-pointer when the Lions got within 23-13, going for 2 to try to get it within 8. And I thought, that's 2 game impacting plays that he made, but they all kind of get washed aside. No sacks, but the pressure was pretty good, I thought, over the game overall, right? Danico Autry getting a mid up to cause another one of the interceptions. Josh referenced they largely took Amon-Ra St. Brown out of the game. I was actually surprised with 12 seconds left in the half that the Lions tried to advance the ball. So Brown got a 15-yard meaningless catch there. Otherwise, he had 1 reception for 7 yards. And in most of the second half, a non-entity until, you get a match down El Shire to get the Lions in field goal range. The offense lost this game. Maybe the defense could have come up with 1 more big play, but when you come up with 5 turnovers, unless you give up 35, 38 points along with them, I have to say that the D did its job.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, when the money was on the table, Goff played better than CJ at the end of the game. He got completions that were necessary. Of course, it helps when you have a field goal kicker that's blasting field goals from almost 60 yards, but you got to get him into that position in the first place. And that's what I was going to bring up, what Charlie just hit on. They didn't sack him once in this game, which is really surprising to me. I think it was unfortunate. Kamari Lassiter's looking like a really good pickup. Unfortunately, Jimmy Ward concussed him and knocked him out of the game with some friendly fire there. Fadakasi got banged up in this game too. So, there's some stuff they'll have to worry about next week as far as guys getting healthy. But, I mean, just all the interceptions, it was great to see. I mean, yeah, Petrie didn't have one, but Lassiter with 2. And, I mean, even Jimmy Ward had one there too. And Bullock with another one. He's looking like a really nice draft pick. Definitely was on the offense, but if some of the defensive stuff, they got Sam Laporta on Henry To'oTo'o a couple times, and they were able to exploit that matchup, which makes sense. But yeah, at the end of the day, you ran the ball for like 1 yard per carry with Joe Mixon. And he had like 25 carries, if I remember correctly. So it wasn't for a lack of trying. They they couldn't get it going. And then CJ, just the bad moments. And I think I said it earlier. I'd like to see him put a little more zip on the ball. I don't need him to be Brett Favre, just throwing 100 miles an hour, but I see the ball floating a little more than I think it needs to. So I don't know if that's a choice by CJ or if he's not stepping into his throws as much because he's had so much pressure lately, but the one to Tank, it was underthrown, but if you don't put so much air under it, the one in the end zone I'm talking about, probably not going to end up. And he was late. Like that touchdown was there if he would have just seen it sooner. I don't know what he was waiting on, but anyway, CJ's a great player and he had a bad second half. That stuff's going to happen.
There's a saying that most prophecy is self-fulfilling. We have a comment from a Lions fan who's just saying that the Lions, even with the big deficit, stayed calm. They've been in this. They've done this before. Conversely, the Texans have done this before and just completely coughing it up and imploding in the second half. Is this becoming, I'll get your final thoughts on the way out the door here, as we're ahead of Monday Night Football matchup against another floundering Texan team and the Cowboys. But as we go out the door, is this mental with this team? Is this becoming a mental block where it's just they are now expecting to implode in the second half?
I don't sense that's the case. I mean, it certainly isn't implausible to suggest the idea of here we go again can creep in. I don't think they turtle with their game planning offensively. They just lose all their effectiveness. If you go back and you look at the play sheet, it's not like they just ran the ball on first down every time in the second half, trying to nurse the lead and bleed some clock. They just epically failed. I did scratch my head a little bit, given Mixon finished the night with 25 carries for just 46 yards. It's not often in the NFL a back gets that many carries at under 2 yards per for the game. But when they ran with Mixon on the second down, whether they were scared of a sack or thought he was overdue to have a good run. And then I didn't think it was a no-brainer interference call. Arnold, handsy, we talked about it in the preview, leading the league in defensive back penalties. And they hit the big 41-yard pass interference call with him in the first quarter. But he was diving, making a play. If you get a hand on a guy, as opposed to getting a real tug on the guy, and the coverage was there otherwise. So maybe running on the first 2 downs, Fairbairn from 58 yards, as great as he's been, he's certainly not automatic from there. I don't think it's psychological. I just think physically they have failed way too often in the second half. But the Lions are 8-1. So while it feels like you puked the game away, it's not a shameful defeat in the overall. I will say, and this lends that much more fuel to the fire, they're not a real contender. They can win their little AFC South and put up another one of those cute little AFC South banners, but they're a B-tier team. Well, they're now 2 games back of Buffalo, 2 games back of Pittsburgh. So unless they're just upsets galore, they can forget about any shot of having 2 home playoff games. They could lose the first one at home, right? They're playing the Ravens, or the way the Chargers are coming on. But they're going to have to win 2 road playoff games if they're to make some miracle run in January. And only a fool would buy into that other than that anything is possible. Well, I don't think that is. Not this season.
No, this is just who they are as far as the second half scoring. There's only been 2 games this year where they've scored more than a touchdown. It was against the Patriots and that first game against the Colts. That's it. In a lot of these games, they're either shut out or just getting a field goal. I mean, this is who they are at this point. And that's why they play so many close games that it concerns me, because I don't feel like Bobby Slowick sets them up for a lot of success in these last moments at the end of games when they have the ball and they can finish it out and close it out. I don't like the play calls, especially on that last drive. I wanted CJ to have some options, even an option for him if he wanted to scramble and just pick up a few yards with his feet and just get you that first down. Just give him some more. Not just hey, this is the call. Like, give them a couple different things, a couple different options there. And I didn't feel like that was the case. So that's who they are until they figure this thing out. They're going to struggle to score in the second half. And you're not going to win a lot of football games like that. You're just not. So I don't know what the answers are. They're searching for them. They really are. They're able to kind of get going early and it looked good, but nothing feels easy with this offense. Just kind of easy completions and just moving the ball down. Everything feels so hard and such a struggle. And if you're not having the defense turn the ball over 5 times, and like in that Patriots game when they did score a lot in the second half, that's because they were turning the ball over in the Patriots territory, given the Texans short fields. So, to be determined. We'll see if they get it turned around. I think they can beat Dallas for sure, but yeah, it looks like another AFC championship banner. AFC South championship.
And we do need to asterisk it with no Nico Collins, but it's not as if they were pouring it on in the second half against people when Nico was there.
Yeah.
Right? The Lions average about 32 points per game. The Texans have reached 25 points twice this season. The opener against Indy, the rout at New England, that's it. It's not a really good offense. It seems to be underachieving given the components of the offense when healthy, except that the offensive line is poor. How much of that is coaching? I mean, Shaq Mason got absolutely bulldozed a couple of times again in this game, and Scruggs and Patterson as a tandem are just not up to snuff.
Well, I think we'll leave it there. That's going to be it for this episode of Texans on Tap. Thanks to everyone who stayed up late with us, and give us a like on the video if you haven't already. Hit subscribe to the channel, click the bell so you know when new content drops. Like on Thursday, we're going to be doing a preview of Texans Cowboys. So keep an eye out for that. For Charlie and Josh, thanks again for joining us. Until next time, go Texans.